Hello and welcome to the deck tech for our Phi deck that Dan Rutkowski took to second place at US Nationals, joined by Dan. And today we're going to kind of talk about the deck, some of the choices that we made, as well as the thought behind how we're playing the deck in different matchups, and then maybe where we go from here. Okay, so the first thing that we have to talk about is equipment. So most notably, we're not playing Kodachis, despite Kodachi Phi winning UK Nats, where you brought 10 total equipments and a weapon, right? You and I actually differed on
Yep.
one of the helms, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah, so I guess the weapon first, Emberblade. A lot of what we're looking to do is leverage Phi's ability, which allows you to pick up a Phoenix Flame from your discard pile, which is just free card advantage. So we're trying to maximize how often we can do that and how useful we can make that extra card. And having a 3 attack go again on a weapon is already a good rate, and it further enables us to do that Phoenix Flame game plan with the Draconic Chainlink.
One of the most important, I guess, like lines of text on Emberblade that Kodachi's doesn't have is the Draconic tagline. Kind of like as a result of Kodachi Phi not having access to like a Draconic go again, like kind of extender. It's like really difficult for them to pick up Phoenix Flames. Most of the lists don't play more than one Phoenix Flame. They just like only play the one that they start the game with, basically.
I think the 3 attack on the Emberblade is also kind of underrated because it's easy to block. It's like with Mask of Momentum, it's very enticing to block an Emberblade because it gives you your full 3 value. You often get like D reacts 0 for 4s on it because of your Mask of Momentum. It's usually swinging second. But that just opens up for like a Mounting Anger after, or like any of your other breakpoints, or even just like a Rising Resentment when you really need the discount.
Yeah,
Um,
also like where it is on the chain, it's
mhm.
kind of interesting because Phi, at least our version of the deck goes like at least like 5 attacks wide.
Usually 5, yeah.
Yeah, so if you block the second attack, which is the weapon, then you're gonna have
Mhm.
to block again this turn. Let's just talk about, I guess, kind of like the MVP of the deck, which is Mask of Momentum.
Yep, 100%.
I think we went through a couple of iterations where at first we were playing. Let's talk a little bit about the history. At first, I think we were playing when we were playing different iterations of Phi. We were playing Mask of Pouncing Links into almost everyone.
Yeah, we tried cutting momentum at one point.
Yeah, yeah, pretty interesting. And then I think some time around like 2 or 3 weeks before Nationals, we decided that Mask of Momentum was actually just like the best card to play into almost
Mhm.
everyone. That's because most of the time, I think most people don't really want to be blocking a lot of cards. That's what we found.
Mhm.
Most people have been building their decks in a way that if you block, especially if you block multiple cards, you're losing a lot of value.
Agreed. And I think our big part of our game plan is to present effects that ask the opponent to block multiple times for
And
combat chain.
when is it that you would play Mask of the Pouncing Lynx?
So currently only against Oldham. I did play it against the Control Dash in the semifinals, but I think that was fatigue, mental fatigue getting the best of me. I think it's fine there, but if you review that deck list, it's full of like 2 blocks.
Right.
And making them block it efficiently for 20 turns is better than 1 spike turn. But against Oldham, we like Pouncing Links quite a bit because they are so well equipped to block, and they tend to want to block 1 to 2 cards, which will stop Mask Momentum anyway.
Yep.
Um, and we pretty much only cash in the Pouncing Links for 6 or more damage.
Yeah. We did also bring Nullrune Hood. Actually, we brought 3 pieces of AB to the tournament. I think at the time we thought that that was like a winning strategy against Icelander.
Yeah, against the arcane only or heavy Icelanders, we really like having AB3 specifically for the channel like frigid turns. Like Icelander in general, her damage is less efficient than other heroes. She relies heavily on her disruption, and she gets to pretty easily keep channel lake out for 3 turns. So the whole game plan is just when that happens, take advantage of your AB3 and just prevent her damage from getting through. And then once that lake is gone, go back to your game plan of just threatening lots of damage every turn.
Moving on. We brought two chess pieces: Findel Spring Tunic and Flamescale Furnace.
Yeah, so Tunic we also use for Oldham. The game just goes very long, and you can make good value out of the Tunic resource. It protects from things like Winter's Bite. We use it against Icelander as well. We do 3AB plus the Tunic for the same reasons. It helps with the different tax effects like Frostbites and all that. And again, those games go a lot of turns. Otherwise, I think it's Furnace for everything. If we know we're playing its control deck, Aggro Dash obviously prefer Furnace, but if you think they might be on control, you should probably play the Tunic. You just get so much value throughout the game from it. But yeah, no, Furnace kind of became like the bread and butter of the build. Furnace mixed with the Mask of Momentum. At first, we were doing like a full combo strategy into aggro, and we just realized our cards are more efficient, and Mask of Momentum plus the other hit effects in the deck are extremely hard to deal with, and having 3 block value on the chest is just extremely valuable there, where we like actively want to be blocking.
Do you find yourself using the activated ability on Furnace, or is it mostly just there for block?
I honestly think that's an area where I have a little more like room to improve my skill. I'm sure there were a game or two at nationals where I could have leveraged it and I didn't. But I'd say it's not common, but when it comes up, it can actually be really helpful. We don't run a lot of blues, so sometimes we will need to pitch 2 reds, and if we can, the second red is a Phoenix Flame we picked up for free, then that's pretty good.
95% at least of the cases, you're just going to be using the Furnace for the 3 block. I think occasionally you will get a hand where it works out that you can like unbrick your hand, like if you go pitch a red, or you play like a 0 for 3 starter, pitch a red, play Flame Call Awakening, grab a Phoenix Flame, then that Phoenix Flame can be used to Furnace for like a weapon, and you can basically just like play your whole hand off of like the original red that you pitched. So it does happen.
You can also respond with it to like a Oldham Ice React. It doesn't come up often, but
Oh yeah,
there could be some spots where that lets you like
can. Or like
get
if
value out of that card.
Yeah, or if like you pitched a red to like belittle and they like blizzard you and you just have like another red in your hand. Although normally I don't think I would be playing Furnace into Oldham, but I have heard from other people who
This
do
is true.
that it does come up. Snapdragon Scalers versus Tide Flippers. You only really play Tide Flippers against Icelander, right?
Yeah, only Icelander. I like the idea of playing it against Prior to punish the Sigil of Suffering. I don't think it's correct though. We have a lot of 4 base attacks that in a pinch we want to give go again. Like it's not common, but it's not uncommon to need to like start your chain with a blaze. And having that option is just huge. Like you can't really miss in the aggro matchups.
And then I think Shuko is also kind of interesting because our deck doesn't play like a ton of attacks that have 2 power or less, but I do feel like Shuko adds a lot of value overall.
Yeah, no, I think Shuko's up there with Mask of Momentum as like best card. Our list does a pretty good job of triggering it every turn because a lot of our blues are base 2 or less. One really interesting thing that came up in my match against the Control Dash, because of how good those blue attack for 2s are with Shuko.
Yep.
As we got later in the game and I was like searching my deck off of a Flame Call Awakening, I noticed that like my blue to red ratio was staying the same as like the start because we're using all of our blues. We're attacking with them.
Yeah, being able to attack with a blue for 3 is pretty strong.
Exactly. Yep. If we ever have 2, we're throwing 1. You can even go like 0 for 3, 0 for 3, 0 for 3, pick up the flame, and then another 0 for 3 with the blue.
Now let's talk about kind of the core of the deck, which is kind of laid out here. There's off screen another copy of Soaring Strike, because sometimes you take it out. I wanted to talk, I guess, about, I think first Phoenix Flame and like the choice to play 3 Phoenix Flames.
Yeah.
Specifically
I think
with Flame Call Awakening.
Yeah, I think you should lead that one. This was your innovation or improvement to what we were previously doing.
Yeah. So I think originally one of the concerns if you play Phoenix Flames in your deck is when you draw the Phoenix Flames, it can be quite a weak draw. But I think for me, one of the strongest like kind of cards that you can be playing in Flesh and Blood right now, which I put like next to it on purpose, is Belittle. And to me, like Belittle and Flame Call Awakening are both like very similar kinds of cards where they let you kind of cheat the card economy of the game a little bit. Both of them is like a 1 cost for like a 3 go again, but it also lets you grab a card. And so it's a question of like whether or not you can leverage that card to be worth like a full card's worth of value. Obviously, if you grab a blue minnowism and you can utilize the 3 resources, it's like really obvious how you can get a full card's worth of value from it. But with the Phoenix Flame, it's like a little bit less obvious. But I find that when you pair Flame Call Awakening with Phoenix Flames on things like Art of War turns, it can be really strong. In addition, just like the card itself has some nice interactions with Mask of Momentum providing an extra chain link, which can also be quite annoying. Like the moment that you go 6 attacks wide, if your opponent is blocking optimally, which is blocking on the 3rd attack, then they will again have to block twice this turn. And I think last but not least is the interaction that Phoenix Flames has with Enlightened Strike. So Enlightened Strike's cost is just to put a card on the bottom. It doesn't matter if it's like a 1 damage card or like a 4 damage card. And so I think when we first started trying to utilize more kind of like little tricks like fetching a Phoenix Flame with the Flame Call Awakening, or maybe like having a second Phoenix Flame in your graveyard that you play it off of the Flame Call Awakening. It lets you have more flexibility when you draw cards like Enlightened Strike to then leverage your Phi ability to, instead of grabbing like 1 or 2 damage, to like 2 damage if it procs a Shuko, or just like normally 1 damage, they're actually grabbing like 3 damage because you get to bottom the card for Enlightened Strike.
It's also very similar to Belittle in that way. If you don't need your blue minnow, you can just throw it back for your E-Strike as well.
Yep, exactly.
One other quick kind of use case for the flames. Our deck doesn't run any 2 cost attacks. So like everything's really easy to pay for. Usually it's like the weapon plus 1/1.
Yep.
If you do have a hand with 2 ones in hand and you have a flame call or 2 flames in the graveyard, like Yuanji's saying, we use the flame very often to end the chain with like a take the tempo or any 1 cost that we need to get rid of.
Yeah, like if you wanted to like push like a Soaring Strike or something. You can also use the extra 1 sometimes to pay for stuff like Art of War. I don't know. It doesn't come up like that often, but just like getting an extra card, I feel like is pretty nice.
Yep. I will sometimes greed like save an Art of War, like not use it on my first chain link and save it for after the flame call tutors the flame.
Actually, I do that all the time.
Yeah.
I think that that's like the most optimal like way to Art of War. Oftentimes, like you think about like when you're Art of War, if you like banish like a red starter, you're really giving up like you don't gain like that much. But if you're like, one of the nice things about Flame Call Awakening as opposed to Belittle is that you get to tutor out an attack from your deck. So actually, the interaction with Art of War is very strong there.
So we're running 14 blues in the main deck, 2 minnowisms for those belittles, 2 just in case we need to block some time or it's our only card, like we can't use it and we have to set it, which happens on occasion. And then we have 6 copies of blue block 3s that attack for 2, cost 0.
Yeah.
Soul Beat is actually very strong with things like Ancestral and just in general, if they let it hit, they could threaten letting you play a finisher after to threaten Mask or something like that. They're really good against Dromai. Not that we need the help there, but guaranteeing the go again is very strong.
Part of the reason why it's good, why Phi is good against Dromai, they just have like a plethora of like things that you can throw. Even when you draw kind of awkward hands, you can still find ways to get go again if they have dragons on the field.
3 Lava Lane just as a middle of the chain go again for 1 that also blocks 3. It being Draconic comes up.
Yep.
And just having the built-in go again. It's really nice for like Art of War turns and when you're closing the game. An extra chain link for 1 is just annoying. The 3 brands actually used to also be 2 attack block 3s, but we found the list to be a little short on starters.
Yeah, I actually find myself playing the blue brand with Syndicate quite often, like about a quarter of the time that I draw it.
Yeah, I think I'm a little higher even. Not because I want to, it's just how it plays out, right? And like it's your best blue to set by far, I think. Just guaranteeing that Draconic starter.
Yeah. And then I think for my list when I was playing, I think I was just playing 2 brand with Cinderclaw blues. When I was playing like a Snatch blue, I think there's like a balancing act between how many block 2s you want to play in the slot. I don't think that you want to overload with block 2s.
Agreed. Their brands are also really nice against fatigue strategies. because late game when you're drawing 3 blue hands, you have the start of that attacks for 1 instead of having to pick up a flame for 0.
Now let's move on to kind of like the sideboard cards. So you're playing 3 red defense reactions and 2, that's all you got. I think I was on
Yep.
4.
Mhm.
We had 2 epots, and then you have 2 razors and a CNC.
That all you got is just kind of an all-star against Fi, Briar, and Viscerai. It's usually just free 2 life, get a new card back. Even if you're blocking 1, that's totally fine. Use it against Rosetta Thorn against the Rune Blades, unless you need to use it somewhere else. It lines up perfectly with Lightning Press being a 3 block. Doesn't come up often, but it's nice that you have that. That's really all it's there for. It's you keep the same amount of cards, but you save some damage, and those games are always like a couple health point difference for who wins.
Yeah, I think especially like in the 5 mirror, even though the life point swing isn't as high,
Mhm.
sometimes the 5 player knows that like one of the ways that they can get value is by maybe attacking you with like a Phoenix Flame when you have like your 2 block armors up.
Yep.
So when the Phoenix Flame or some other like 1 power attack is threatening mask, like being able to that all you got that attack, even though it only blocks 1, it also like means that you didn't have to give up a card in your hand to block a mask trigger, which is huge.
Yeah, I think that's the most common use case against Fis. You really want to stop a mass trigger. If you can stop their only mass trigger and draw a card, it's huge. It's a big swing. So the sinks go in against Bravo, Showstopper, just to deal with his big attacks more efficiently, to hopefully have them set when he dominates. We're looking to play small hands in that matchup. So we're pretty much always expecting to block with a card or 2. And Sync is more efficient than a 3 block, and it filters our hand if we need.
I think we usually play like I usually play like 2 against Viserai, mostly just because the main way that Viserai gets value is from attacking you with Marvian Skies attached to like a 4 or 7 power attack.
Yep.
So I like having a couple in there for that.
Yeah, I actually didn't play any against Viscerais. I do think that game plan is reasonable. I'm kind of like hoping for a shorter game, I guess, the one I'm playing in that armor's enough. But if the game goes late, those things can be huge. I definitely play all 3 against Dorinthia. That's an obvious one.
And you were playing a couple against Michael in the finals. Not
Yep.
entirely sure if it's correct or not, but
I'm not. He thought it was funny.
yeah, but they're in there.
Yeah, that was all theory again. We didn't have enough practice against that specific build of Icelander. We just figure efficient block to cancel out your like his whole deck is trying to be 1 card 4, right? He's throwing 2 cards, 7s and 8s.
Yeah.
So it's like 3.5 to 4 value per card. And he only has so many. So if we can match that and filter our hand, that seems pretty good. But yeah, not sure if we advise doing that or not yet.
Energy potions, when do you need the extra blues?
Yeah, so we play extra blues against Oldham and Icelander and Lexi. At least that was my plan for Lexi. I didn't
Yep.
play any. Those 2 energy potions swap for 2 reds. Energy potion is just like it's like a bomb against those controlling decks. It says you're protected from Blizzard or taxation. You can even use it on like Aether Ice Rain if your hand's good to pay the hit cost. Unlike Art of War turns, if you don't have a little, it's insane. It can fund the whole turn potentially. Yeah, they just give you explosive turns against these slow decks and help you get through their disruption. At worst, they usually represent weapon swing with Emberblade. Sometimes that's the 3rd link, which gives you the flame too, but they can do a lot more as well.
Do you play Command and Conquer
So
much?
that's we're not sure what the optimal card is. We all had kind of a different idea for it. I was thinking I wanted it for getting through like the early rounds if I saw any like Lexis or off meta decks where they don't run Providence traditionally.
Yeah.
The only game I played it was in the semi-final against Jacob on Control Dash again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, his deck is like 50% defense reactions or something.
Sure.
So it was just you hope to end a chain with it and catch them waiting for more than a 3 attack to block. It just happened to play out exactly that way. It was actually really, really costly for him. He committed all his cards that could block. I got his entire armor suite in 1 turn, which is like, that's what you hope to have happen. It was very lucky that it did line up that way. But Command and Conquers is a great card. If they don't have Crown of Providence, it usually gets them, right? Like
Yeah.
it's known as a very disruptive card. And if you have a defense reaction set rather.
You have 2 razors and then also 2 ancestral empowerment. These are like the cards that usually you take out for like some of the sideboard cards. Would you ever play all of the attack reactions at the same time?
I personally would not. Would you?
No, I wouldn't either.
Okay.
Just talk about like what are the use cases for.
Yep. Yep. So Ancestral's really good in the aggro matchups. Again, the deck asks a lot of questions of the opponent with your soaring strikes and mounting angers to start the chain, and then at some point they usually want to deny your max trigger. And when they do finally commit a card or two, if you ancestral over the top, it's just backbreaking because it's free for you. You draw a card, and now if they want to stop a mass trigger, they have to give you more cards. And the deck plays out very similar to Chain, where once your opponent starts blocking out, they can't really stop because your turns are so consistent. You don't usually give up tempo very easily. And when I say aggro decks, it's really the Rune Blades and Fi.
Yeah.
Like aggro Oldham is kind of a different story. I think they're fine there. Because of the 3 block, and they still can get over the top, but he can very easily Earth React or Crown of Seeds to cover it. That's why we put in Razor Reflex for that matchup. 3 damage is harder. Obviously, he could do both of those, Earth React and Crown, but it's less common that that lines up. They're also can be really punishing for Oldham Ice Reacts. Even with 2 cards in hand, if you have no money floating, it allows you to float your pitch and push damage and deny the value. You basically just get a card from them for free.
Yeah.
Any other use cases for you?
Razor can be helpful at the very end of the game as well to if
Mhm.
you find yourself in the 2 card versus 2 card loop. If you still have like your tunic up, you can attack with like a 0. They like ice react to you. You just like razor them.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, mostly it's just like to push a little bit over the Oldham when they're not expecting it, and hopefully you get some value there off of like a snatch or like off of like a mounting anger or like something that you want to like push extra value, or like Dan said, to deny a ice react is really strong. There's some extra cards here that you said that you sometimes you take out. It's the Yellow Belittle, Soaring Strike, Art of Wars, Take the Tempo, Lava Burst, and Red Soul Beads. Can you just talk about like some of the situations that you might play them or might take them out?
Yep, for sure. So the Yellow Belittle and the Soaring Strike, those are just not part of my 60 for the aggro decks. Those are the 2 I don't have there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they just don't fit. The Ancestral Empowerments take that slot, I think. No, the Soul Beat Strikes are in that spot. Or the Take the Tempos. Yeah, pretty much you're always cutting at least 2 of these cards.
Yeah.
The Ancestrals just swap 1-1 with the Razors usually. Take the Tempo is the Command and Conquer slot probably. Anytime I want the CNC, I take the Tempo out. I think it's reasonable to cut take the Tempo versus Oldham as well. It's pretty rare you get to hit with 3 chain links. That's also why we don't run Salt the Wounds. That's our only pouncing links matchup.
Yeah, it's a little awkward. I actually started playing Take the Tempo more against Oldham because I
Mm.
found that for me against Oldham, it's like a swap between that and Soul Beat Strike. I think Soul Beat Strike as like a non-go again attack is a little bit more awkward to play than Take the Tempo.
Yep.
And I've actually found that like it's not necessarily frequent that Oldham wants to not block you, but it's usually like they block a bunch. And then if they're blocking, then you get a chance to arsenal a card like Take the Tempo.
Mhm.
And then like the turn that they are trying to pivot against you with like a spinal or something, then they want to not block, and then Take the Tempo is like one of the ways that you can punish them.
Agreed. I've also found take the Tempo to be quite strong. It's just not consistent.
Yeah.
Was their reasoning for sometimes taking out. Basically the 2 energy potions, the Razor reflexes, they swap for Ancestral, and then the 2 energy potions swap for some combination of take the Tempos and Soul Beat Strikes.
Yeah.
Still unsure on what's optimal. And then for Icelander, it's the same. The energy potions go in for take the Tempo, Soul Beat, or Lava Burst,
Yeah.
depending on the build of Icelander. That's the only time we consider cutting Lava Burst because they can pretty consistently stop you from getting to Chainlink 4.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fine to have it there. It's just you don't have the option to block 3 usually.
Right.
Like against Michael's list, I was playing all 3 Lava Bursts for sure because blocking 3 is fine there. And the red pitch, so they're pretty single single use, and you don't always get that use.
Yeah.
And like this deck is built to be very flexible and consistent, and it doesn't fit in there. We only cut, at least I only cut Art of War against Bravo Showstopper. We kind of look to play a very grindy game there, where we block efficiently if needed to stop disruptive effects, or if their disruptive effects don't affect us, we just push. Chokeslam being one of those, which shuts off Art of War, so it's bad there. Art of War also doesn't have a block value, which can be problematic in that matchup because it's not uncommon to block with 3 cards for like 4 or 5 turns in a row before you pivot. And usually an Art of War in hand says you can't block. Like you just go so inefficient if you do. I think you certainly could play it and be okay, kind of just adding variance to the matchup. We could just play our consistent value plan and outvalue them. What do you think?
Yeah, I think for Bravo specifically, because the deck has like a low damage ceiling coupled with also wanting to not block that much, makes
Mhm.
it so that you don't need like the Art of War to like push over the top, but you just want to kind of pressure them into blocking to like shut off their hands. Like the difference between like a Bravo 2 card hand and a Bravo 3 card hand is pretty massive. So as long as you can keep forcing them into playing like 2 card hands and then just like blocking them when they have like 3 or 4 card hands, I didn't feel like you needed the value. But whereas if you play against Briar or like some of these other decks that also don't want to block you, but when they don't block you, they go like way over like the top. So you kind of need the Art of War to catch yourself back up in value a little bit. Let's talk now about preparation process and the different strategies that we had for the most common matchups that we thought that we would face. I think you said this at the Nationals that you thought that the strategy was probably more important than the cards itself. Obviously, like the cards that you
Mhm.
choose like lead into the strategy, but if you just play the cards without the right strategy, it's like not that helpful.
Yeah, a lot of people would like ask about the deck and any spice, and you can see it here, right? There's nothing too innovative or crazy. Like the E-Strike, Flameclaw Awakening combos really strong. The Soul Beat strikes overperform like crazy, I think. Everyone's on 3 Snatch now, but Snatch is insane too. But yeah, no, the deck is it's just a very efficient, well thought out Fi deck, and the spice is the game plans. I think the common belief of Fi decks is that you play it like it's draft and you just don't block, and you say, "Here's all my damage. What can you do about it?"
Yep.
Which is very far from what how we intended and did use the list.
Yeah, so let's go over first like the aggro matchup. So let's say you're playing against Briar or Viserai.
Mhm.
What is your overall game plan going into those 2 heroes?
Yep. So it is pretty much the same for both. I don't play the things UNG does for Viserai, but I bring in the 2 that all you got, and I cut probably a Soul Beast strike and a Take the Tempo, something like that. 2 of the cards on the right side are cut. But the game plan is you use your Furnace and Shuko to deny hit effects as well as your cards. We really want 3 and 4 card hands and to block. We want to be ready to block with 1 card. So the deck is built in a way that the average hand has that. The game plan is really just to deny every draw effect presented and every Marvin Sky effect that Respire presents. The breakpoints for both decks are almost always 4 or 7, I think, like you mentioned earlier. So having the 4 armor between the 2 to start is really nice. The Furnace being able to block an additional time for 1 is great. Most of the blues in our deck block for 3. So we usually have a blue, or a block 3 rather, to spare. So combining that with the Furnace to prevent an additional effect is pretty strong. That game plan does add a bit of a clock. Like once our armor is gone and we're now having to use cards to stop those effects, I think this is why you run the sinks. We kind of have to have the game in a position where when we're doing our final armor block, even if it's with Mask of Momentum, like that's very common when they're at like 10 to 15 health. We have to make sure that that turn we're able to push them off of 4 cards, ideally 3 cards. Once they're on 2 cards, we can then loop until the end of the game.
Yeah, I think I was just running the sinks mostly because like if Viserys play like usually blue Moblin skies, I don't it's not too bad, but they play
Yep.
what like 3 reds, 3 yellows.
Mhm.
So just like it has a little bit higher density of hit triggers than Briar has For me, it's just like, yeah, you cut like one set of like attacks. Now I'm not sure which one it would be. If you would take the tempo, or maybe like you just cut like two like 1 for 4s or something. I think that's like the general idea.
On the offensive side, again, we're just presenting. The goal is to still trigger mask every turn through
Yep.
blocking, either presenting mask twice or presenting something like a soaring strike, um, a soul bead strike at the end of the chain, where you have a set card waiting, is very strong, especially if the attack before it hit. It's just this now. It's this huge mystery, right? It's like if they let this through, they could be taking an additional like 10 plus damage. Or that could just be at the end of the turn and they have no idea. So it puts a lot of pressure on your opponent to make the right decision.
Usually, if you're playing the deck, you want to try to separate out your hit triggers. So when you
Mhm.
can, like, put your snatch in a spot where, like, if they block the snatch, you have like a way to then threaten a mask, or have the snatch at the end so that after they block the mask out, in a situation where you normally wouldn't get another mask trigger, you present a snatch. Okay, how about now talking about against Oldham? So I think Oldham was one of the decks that we wanted to kind of prepare for the most.
Yeah, we definitely expected all of them to be the most popular.
It almost was.
Yeah, I mean that and Fi. Fi not as early on, right?
Yeah.
When we started building the deck, Oldham was like the clear favorite. As we got closer to nationals, I think we also expected Fi to be like we knew either one of them could have been the most popular, and they both kind of were.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yes, the first thing we kind of aimed to do was figure out the ultimate game plan, which I think you kind of led the way on that. If you want to talk through your innovations there.
Yeah, I think when the Oldham is trying to play this kind of like aggressive game plan, a lot of the ways that they generate, it's like a value-oriented game, even though normally against Oldham it doesn't feel like that, at least in previous formats. In previous formats, like if you're playing chain against Oldham, it's like, how do you break the wall, right? Like, how do you get through their defenses? But I think current games against Oldham for aggro decks usually feel like value wars, where you're trying to get like a little bit more value from the fact that your deck in general just generates more damage on average per turn than theirs does,
Mhm.
whereas they're trying to get value out of their hit triggers. So one of the things that we did when preparing was kind of look at, well, what are all the hit triggers that Oldham is presenting, right? So they usually present stuff like Command and Conquer with Pummel or Disable, so things that are attacking your arsenal.
Mhm.
Or they might come with a Choke Slam, which is something that's attacking your ability to like plus damage on your attacks.
Mhm.
Or they might come at you with a Spinal, which is trying to prevent you from going wide. Those are, I think, the most common ones that get played.
I think all of what you just said there really warped the list I had played at PTLL into what we see now. Like Spreading Flames immediately went because of they can take away the plus on it. It's not good in less than 4 and 5 card hands, and it's just not consistent.
Yeah,
What are some of the other ways that you addressed those concerns you mentioned?
yeah. So it's like basically, I think you can't help the fact that your hero is like the card pool is built like the way it is. Some of
Mhm.
those like hit triggers are going to be like good against you, but I think that the point is to minimize the number of attacks that you're running, that just like all of the hit triggers just kind of like ranch you, right?
Yep.
Like if you're playing like a Spreading Flames combo style, literally all of the hit triggers affect you in some way. But if you play all these like 1 for 4s, well, the 1 for 4, like when you're getting hit by the choke slam, doesn't like matter as much, right? Because like
Mhm.
obviously it shuts off the mounting anger hit trigger, but it's still like on rate. Like you're attacking 1 for 4, then you can attack with like your weapon and then maybe like another card. You
Yep.
still get to take your turn as normal. E strike is actually like a big thing to help you out. E strike is like a really good counter to Spinal Crush,
Mhm.
where you can block 5 to 6 with 2 cards in your hand, and then you can just like 7 them. And then I think the last thing that you talked about, like how can we beat like these attacks that are hitting your arsenal is you want to play the game in a way that you're not too reliant on your arsenal.
Yep. Can't destroy my arsenal if I don't have one.
Yeah. So most of the time, like the card that we arsenal is like a Phoenix Flame, and you're just arsenaling it because
Yep.
if you play two, then then you get like a +1 from your Shuko. But if they hit it, then you gave up like a point of damage, right? Um, things like that actually is one of the reasons why I decided to play Crown of Providence instead of Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, is because when you do want to set up like the 5 card hands, it offers you like an additional kind of like source of protection.
Mhm.
But I think either strategy is probably fine. Pouncing Lynx likely does have some applications against other heroes that Crown of Providence is a little bit more narrow. Yeah, so yeah, it's like mostly about kind of like overall the strategy of how you're trying to play the game out instead of trying to like set up these like huge turns, because you know that the oldham is just trying to like play mid-range and throw these like semi-big attacks that are a little bit disruptive. You just want to just like also be just like throwing your hands like as you get them.
One of the win conditions is getting an Art of War down though in the arsenal and protecting it. It's just a lot riskier and less consistent.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's why I like the Crown of Providence. By the way, how many oldhams did you end up playing at the tournament?
I believe I played against two,
Hmm.
and they were both playing Rampart.
Okay. Were you playing the same guy?
Um,
Did you play the same guy? No, no, no. Played.
no, it was two different. I don't remember the first one super well, but the second one played out. Oh no, I remember both. The first one played out in a way that my early aggression, I guess, has forced him to play blockout, which tends to go really well for the five because we go too many chain links wide and over the top, and so I just got to like play my game in that one. The second one was Rampart, but he played more traditional, where he's trying to get in his disruptive effects when he can. He's just playing super efficient
Hmm.
value game. That one actually went to time. I missed. I was at the end of day two, and I was already locked for one seed, so I kind of turn the brain off a little bit to rest, but
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
playing. I missed that I had a Fi trigger on an Arbor turn and a Tunic to pay for a flame pickup. I didn't realize until after I played a Lava Burst, so I just had to pick it up and set it. Because I didn't do that, we ended up going to time when we were both looping each other. I
Yeah,
was at
okay.
two,
Yeah.
but I couldn't find a 3 block. So he kept hammering, putting me to 2 cards, and then my 2 cards would be 7. He's at 1, so he'd go to 1 card and keep swinging hammer. So he couldn't get through that cycle. Once a time, I ended up no blocking at the end because I was already locked in. But
I think in general, if the oldhams are playing Rampart, I think the matchup is like a little bit easier than if they play Stalagmite.
I think so too.
Just because Rampart doesn't inherently provide any sort of value. It's just converting their blues into like spreading out the blocks. Your deck doesn't
Agreed.
really break the chain.
Yep, I definitely agree. The Rampart, you feel more comfortable. It's less things to play around, like keeping that one extra money for the Stalagmite block. Either way, like you said, they're both tricky. We're both kind of looking to disrupt each other in different ways.
And then lastly, Icelander. So I think the Icelander strat that we had is honestly maybe like a little bit outdated at this point, but let's talk
Yep.
about what we thought going in and maybe how we would adjust it going forward.
Do you want to take that one? You kind of, again,
Yeah.
started that strategy that we ended up deploying at the
Yeah.
event.
So Icelander, at least all the builds that we were seeing on Talishar and then the ones that have been doing well at the other nationals, most of them were all focused on having like a heavy like arcane damage based strategy, and then like one of the ways that they would I guess get value is that they would like try to play like a couple of insidious chills against aggro, and then hit you with like Aether Ice Vein. They would try to stall you out with Channel Lake Frigid and get in some chip damage there. And they also have like maybe some defense reactions like Sigil of Permafrost to kind of slow down your turns, right? So it's like a lot of things that like slow you down, but not a lot of overall damage that's going out. So actually, one of the ways that you can just kind of beat them, and it's pretty interesting because I think that basically like none of the Fi discourse that I was reading like really thought to do this is I think you just like play AB3 against them. Like they don't have enough damage in their deck to put you at a life total or you're like threatened by any of their stuff, right?
Yep.
And as long as you have cards like E-Strike and Belittle and like 1 for 4s and 0 for 4s that let you like present like some amount of damage that they have to like respond to with their disruption, it doesn't matter how many turns they have channel like Frigid up, like they're not gonna really be doing a lot of damage to you during those turns. You just have to like preserve your life total as best you can. And so I found that most of the time when I play against Icelander with AB3, I end the games with like around 18 life.
No, I agree with that. I think it's also the fact that they get to easily keep channel lakes for 3 turns. Um, Sometimes your hand lines up and you have double belittle and you play like it doesn't exist, but more often it makes your hands very inefficient and kind of just cashing out to block, like you're saying, the small arcane numbers they present, like other than the 5s. You can, if they do anything but the 5s, you can always just cover their 3 arcane plus their mooning, waning moon just by pitching your hand, and that's fine. Like they're not advancing much. You're maybe taking a couple chip damage, and you're just waiting for the channel to go away.
Yep. And so I think that that strategy doesn't work out too well against Michael Hamilton's deck.
Nope. Not as well. I think it can. It depends on how things line up, but I don't think it's probably not the right game plan. More of a tool.
Yeah, I think it's actually quite interesting because his deck overall has like a lot less disruption. He's not playing cards like Sigil Permafrost. Obviously, he still has Channel like Frigid and Blizzard. But in general, like the ways to like disrupt you shouldn't be as high. And so it's pretty interesting. I am considering just like cutting the null runes out of the deck altogether and just playing the Tide Flippers. Yeah, it's just like if the attacks Icelander is gonna be like the predominant way that they attack, I could see having AB1 being kind of important just so that you can semi-efficiently like block a Aether Ice Vein where you just pitch a blue, block 1, and then pay 2 to avoid discarding like you were gonna discard a card anyways. But then other than that, you just kind of try to like do as much damage as you can, which is obviously where the Icelander wants the aggro deck to be, but I think you just kind of have to play into it a little bit.
Yeah, I think it definitely requires testing. I could see any configuration of 1, 2, or 3 AB being correct, even 0, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think 0 is kind of tough if they have a Kraken Aether Vein as well.
Oh, sure. Yep.
Yeah, I think 1 so that you can like use an extra resource on your turn to
Yep.
just like stop them from even trying that.
Yeah, I don't think we'll go less than 1, but it gets awkward because sometimes you need to use the flippers
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
go again effect.
yeah.
That's why I think maybe 2 could be good, but we'll figure that out and maybe we'll record another video when we do.
Yeah, so that's generally the deck tech as a whole. This video has gone on quite a long time.
Yep.
But if you guys are trying to play this deck, just make sure that you have the right game plans for like your expected matchups, and maybe you're gonna have to change some of the cards around. I wasn't playing like all the same cards as Dan, but like in general, our strategies were the same. And that's probably like the most important thing going into it. How you use the cards is oftentimes more important than the actual cards themselves.
Agreed.
All right, so hopefully you guys maybe can try playing this deck. I'm not sure what's gonna happen if they're gonna hit any part of this deck as part of the banned and suspended announcement, but if you do plan on playing this deck, we're gonna be uploading maybe some gameplay videos. So we'll show Dan playing some games on Talishar, and we'll just record that to help you guys play this deck.
Yeah, and be sure to like and subscribe. I'm sure we'll be
Yeah, like and
looking to
subscribe.
put out a lot of content.
Yeah, we're gonna be pushing more content out. We are in the process of kind of fleshing out everything for our team. So even the team name and everything is placeholders. More news to come as we get closer to Worlds.